running, and I suggest, and the next panel is efficiency of usage of EU funds and interaction between the Parliament and the civil society. This panel will be started with and will be moderated by me, but we have two young ladies who will present this. First, Terry Reinke from European Parliament, and then Daniela Božović from Belgrade Open School. Terry, the floor is yours.
How do I do this? Great, thanks a lot, Chairman and colleague. And I think I have the most difficult task right now to be the first speaker after the lunch break. But I hope that you bear with me anyway, even though you've probably all eaten very good food now. And also from my side, I'm very happy to be here. I'm very happy that this is happening, because I think that especially also the ties and relations that we can build with lunch or just knowing each other now are going to be very, very useful. And I think that this is something that we as parliamentarians should commonly work on, this cooperation, because in the overlook of funds, but also in many other questions in the accession process, I think it's of great importance. And if I may, before I go into the topic, I would like to have a couple of political points also in reaction to what we have already discussed in the morning, because I think that there are some points that I feel are already becoming more and more clear in the debate that we have been having. And I think the first one is that, and Mr. Bogovic was showing the principle of solidarity and how it works in the European Union and how regional and structural funds are a very important tool of this. I would still say that money is and cannot be the only instrument of solidarity. And I think that this is very important, because very often also when we look at the IPA funds, it is somehow being looked at as the sign that the European Union is very open for accession and that they want to support the candidate and accession countries. But I think that on both sides, in the candidate and accession countries, as well as also within the European Union, political will is still of utmost importance. And even if there is money flowing, we still need to look, of course, at the questions of how this money is being spent, and we need to overlook it. But at the same time, we also need to stay committed to this bigger goal that I think we are all sharing, to have the countries in this region join the European Union as quickly as possible. And the second point, and this is, we have spoken about awareness and visibility a little bit, and that is something that I have also learned now, especially with the Brexit referendum, that citizens will not only be convinced by money and investment. And I think that Derek, my colleague, gave a very a useful example there, because Wales, the region where he comes from, but also Cornwall, the north of England, these are actually regions that have benefited massively and are net beneficiaries of EU funding. But at the same time, when the Brexit referendum happened, they actually had very high outcomes of people voting to leave. So I think that every money that we spend, we always need to put it in some kind of context and explain to people why we are doing this, because otherwise they are not going to be convinced. And also, we need to very clearly look at, if we have misspent money, how we can prevent this from happening in the future, how we can evaluate, because if you look at the history of European structural funds, there are actually many examples where money was misspent, and that has then become obvious to everyone. And this is something that, for the reputation of the accountability of these kind of spendings, is very, very bad. So this is the second point. And then I think when we are speaking about sustainability of funding, and this is the last political point that I want to finish with, it's of course that the IPA funds are, for me, and I think this is this stronger development focus also, they are basically also a trying out phase then for managing much higher amounts of money when the countries will have eventually entered the European Union. And now with the experiences from the Central and Eastern European countries that joined, especially now still the challenges in Croatia, in Bulgaria and in Romania, for example, with absorption rates, we can very clearly see that these IPA funds need to be kind of a learning phase and also empowering the administrative capacity, the local authorities, in order not to be overwhelmed. Then at the point when the country enters, a lot of more money is coming, billions of euros, and then you don't really know how to spend it. So I think that this is of great importance from my point of view. But maybe to go into the topic of this session. So the session, I found it very interesting that this question of being efficient and having the parliament and civil society involved is something that was put together. I very much believe that this is true because I think that having a participatory and inclusive process is actually making the spending of funds much more efficient. And I want to speak a little bit about our experiences in the European Parliament, and I'm also very happy if you then share your experiences or how we could improve this. And for me, first of all, the Parliament and especially the Regional Committee in the European Parliament is the safeguard of citizens' interest in the questions on how this money is being spent. As you know, we are not the executive, so we are not the ones that are actually taking the decision in which kind of specific projects these money is being spent, but we are setting the criteria. And we are also setting the criteria when it comes to evaluation, when it comes to monitoring. And this, of course, is then, well, finalized, or the most important act that we are doing, the legislation, the CPR that we are producing, but it's not only that. It is something that is basically happening over the whole term of the Parliament, the whole parliamentary term, and it does not only mean that we are working on legislation, which is of course very important, but sometimes it can mean that we are defending the regional funds and the logic behind the regional funds against our colleagues, because we have had situations when there is any kind of political problems that our colleagues from other committees, they come and they say, oh, but shouldn't we just reprogram regional funds and then maybe we can solve it somehow? And we are always trying to stay within the logic and say there are criteria, and this is also for making transparent to the citizen how this money is being spent, and defend a little bit this basis for how we are spending money. But it is also very much making transparent and making visible to the citizens and to the people in the regions, especially how this money is being spent. And for us, this means various things. For example, next week I'm going to Greece with a delegation from this committee, and we are looking at specific projects. We are looking at successful projects, but we are also looking at projects where actually things didn't work out. And I think that this is then, creating awareness around this, speaking with the people what were the problems. This is a very important task that we are having, and this should not be underestimated. And then, of course, we are also directly working with the Committee of the Regions, where we have representatives from the regional authorities that are giving us feedback and are working with us very closely on how we can improve the different challenges that we are facing. The second point, and this is why I think that the parliaments and civil society are linked, and they should cooperate very closely, because when we look at how the money is being spent and also working together with the executive, the civil society very often has the role as the corrective for maybe too one-sided approaches that are coming from governments, that are coming from executives. And there are also the safeguards and the guarantees that there is a stronger ownership of these projects. Because if you have a strong civil society that is not only giving input on how these projects should be shaped, but that is also then explaining back to the people why these decisions were being taken, this is a very important glue in order to make the projects work. And how does this materialize in our work in the European Parliament? What do I mean with this link between civil society and the Parliament? We always, in the regional committee, we are trying to strengthen the partnership principle, and this means that there is an inclusion of civil society actors in all different phases of the programming, and also in the monitoring and evaluation, to have them on the same level in all the discussions. And I think that this is very important, that they are not only being consulted for, as a fig leaf to show, yeah, we are very inclusive, but to really take their views and their thoughts seriously. And why is this so important? When we are looking at this region, and when we are looking also at many things that speakers before me have been mentioned, is that many of these big challenges that we are seeing can be tackled much better if you have a strong parliamentary oversight and a strong inclusion of civil society. And I'm speaking here about the question of corruption, rule of law, of course. I'm speaking here about the challenge of awareness raising, about that these projects actually exist. I think many of the colleagues from the national parliaments have raised this. I'm also speaking about institutional capacity, because a functioning democracy can only work if there is a civil society sector that actually gives input to the various political discussion. And then I also think, and this was a point between IPA 1 and IPA 2, also when we look at the challenges of decentralization. Because if you have local groups on the ground that you are speaking with, it's much easier to actually realize what the needs of the local communities are. And there I would like to maybe give one example from the report that I was mentioning before, that I was the rapporteur of in the European Parliament about marginalized communities. And there were sometimes massive investments done for Roma communities. And when you afterwards ask the people who were supposed to be benefiting from these projects, they said, well, but this is something that we actually didn't want and didn't need. And it would have been much easier and much more efficient, in fact, if these people had been asked before. So what we are advocating for in this report, for example, is from a very early stage to always have, and this is mandatory, people from the communities affected by these projects involved in the shaping of the project, but then also in the monitoring and in the evaluation. And maybe just to wrap up, what I think might be steps that to improve these kind of challenges that I've been speaking about, what we are seeing, and this was also in the report of the Court of Auditors mentioned, that there should still be more efforts for institutional support of civil society and of media. I know that this is a long way, and I know that many of you feel, yeah, but we have already given them money, and then they have tried, and then some of these NGOs have even failed, and then, you know, it was difficult, or the cooperation didn't work properly. It is a long process. I think we are all very much aware of it, but it is a process that in the long run is going to be of great value for the whole society, and I believe it is actually, it does not have any alternative. And then the second point that I would like to raise is that when we are looking at the way that the IPA funds are being used, not only to look at is the money flowing, but also to look at the track record and the sustainability of the project more. So when we are monitoring and evaluating, did these funds really reach the aims that they were foreseen for? And this is sometimes not something that you can see in a 5 years period. I'm aware of that, but I think that this is also something coming from the report of the Court of Auditors, to have measurable goals, and then also to be critical if these goals were not being met, and very clear what needs to be done better in order to actually meet these goals. And then there would be many more things to say, but I'm also very much looking forward to the debate with you, and thanks a lot for your attention, and I hope that we will have a good exchange later on.
Thank you, Terry. And now Ms. Daniela Božović, the floor is yours.
Poštovani predsjedavajući, uvaženi dear friends, dear parliamentarians, I would like to say that I'm very pleased that I'm here today and that I have the opportunity as representative of a civil society to talk to you about this very important topic, and that is the use of IPA funds and oversight and monitoring of IPA funds and the whole cycle of financing from the IPA funds. Ms. Renke gave a nice introduction why it is important, besides the Parliament and civil society, to have recognized and visible also the other ways of following and monitoring IPA funds. I called as synonym for cooperation in Serbia to be SECO, and SECO is very important in the region too. That is the mechanism of a sector civil society organization initiated by the European Integration Office in 2011. That is a model cooperation, how the civil society, first of all, is recognized and then included in the very process that is the basis for the contribution and the real role that the civil society must have. All of my presentation I put into three sectors. First, I would like to say something about SECO mechanism, because I'm not sure how many of you are aware of this mechanism of cooperation with the civil society that works here in our society. So first I will say what it looks like and how it functions, then what the achievements are, what has been done in the previous period, and what are the challenges that we face, and what are the shortcomings and maybe not so well that is going on, and where should we work on, and to conclude something, how to promote our cooperation. As I said, the mechanism of cooperation with the civil society, when we talk about managing the international assistance, there is the accent on IPA funds that does not that includes also other donors that is started by the European Integration Office. And I have to say that thanking the initiative of the office, that mechanism lived through this day, besides all the challenges. And of course there is room for improvement, but without that institutional support that is very important, as we could see, and it comes from the institution, which is the European Integration Office of the Republic of Serbia, so that the other institutions can recognize the mechanism and the significance of cooperation with the civil society. SECO mechanism was formed so that civil organizations could be included in the whole cycle, from programming, planning, programming, monitoring and reporting. And of course the whole that cycle is very complex and complicated, and for the time being we're in the first two stages connected to planning and programming we are included. And as for monitoring, we are here in some kind of limited framework. But the idea was for the civil society has to be networked because of the considering the IPA funds, and in that way to articulate the voice of the people, how that can be done, how it is possible, because we do not have one representative of the civil society. It is not possible to give a vote of a representative of civil society, but as a channel of communication to the widest possible public for the civil society, we include media and academia and everything that is the civil society. And that is how we came to 10 consortium of the organization of civil society that cover many different topics that are defined by national priorities for international assistance. And those are, I will read it because I don't want to skip anything. So it is SECO for Justice, Home Affairs, Public Administration Reform, Environment and Climate Change, Human Resources and Social Development, Traffic, Competitiveness, Energy, Agriculture and Rural Development, and one thematic area that covers culture, media and civil society. In these 10 areas, these sectors of civil society, we have more than 500 organizations included, and the SECO mechanism functions like one area. For example, public administration reform. There are 3 to 5 key organizations that are leading this, that are selected on the competition, public competition, that showed the knowledge and experience in that field. And they are the leaders in this field. so that this consortium could share this network with other civil societies that are in this field, so that there is a wider inclusion of the civil society, especially organizations from the local society and organizations that are less represented when we talk about communication. Now, what is really important is that until now, this cooperation, as I said, through these 4 cycles, consisted of consultations and including in the sectoral debates and giving comments to some priorities, and drew attention to what we face in the field on the ground and what we recognize as a key requests that should find the way to be a priority in the strategic documents. And we were consulted in the preparation of national documents, for example, a strategic document for Serbia and multi-beneficiary document, and designing of sector documents. So every sector group for one area. Well, bearing in mind that from the very beginning, in front of my organizations, I have been included in the work of SECO, I can say that the whole stadium and the progress was very gradual. So at the beginning, we were in very limited capacities, and we couldn't participate and give comments as much as we could, and we were invited less. So now we, in order to have some regular communication, so by the European Integration Office, we actually got through them the plan, the agenda, so that we can plan our program. So I can say that this dialogue and cooperation with the aim of better programming of pre-accession assistance was going upwards. So why is it important to have all this mechanism? And Terry said there is a great importance in civil society and the civil sector. You're all aware that the whole process is very complex and demanding. And when we talk about procedures, technical documentation and everything else, there should be a lot of efforts put into this, and sometimes we cannot cover all the areas and come to all kinds of information. So that is why using all the resources and the resources of knowledge of the civil society in some areas is very important for this process. And on the other side, there is representation of the inclusion of the whole stakeholders. So there should be all very important stakeholders that are in this process, which implies that you are part of this process and that you build the trust and the feeling of ownership over that. And one other very important aspect is the larger transparency of the whole process. If you're included in the very process, you will come upon some information, and you know what it's like, and it's easier to follow it and to inform the public. So that is why this is one very positive third aspect. It's the positive aspect of the whole SECO mechanism. It's informing. In the first part of the session, we talked about the not knowing a lot about IPA funds, so what they meant, how they were used. And now when we have the results of the investigations and of research, it is now better to see. So this is one of the better ways of communicating and easier way to come to the citizens. And we are one step closer to them through our activities, regular and project activities, in order to give them this, to help them find the significance of IPA funds and what it brings, what kind of benefits it brings to the citizens. So in short, I will tell you the most important and positive achievements in the last 5 years. First of all, that is the possibility of the civil society to be included in the process of planning and programming funds. As I said, Serbia is the first in the region that recognized the institutional way and tried to strengthen the coordination and cooperation with civil society concerning the international funds, international help. So from that side, civil society became recognizable in the whole process. And what I have already said, all the other national institutions recognized civil society while creating strategy documents and determining priorities and everything that is very important in this process. Second achievement is what I have already said, and that is better informing in the process of European integration, in the whole process of international help. So what I said something about networking of civil society organizations in sectors when we made the consortium of societies, organizations that are very close, and to organize SECOs through topics and fields. So we profiled it better. So it made it easier to make a cooperation through between institutions and some other activities. So more precisely, I will give you 2 more positive examples from my own experience. Cooperation with the national authorities, especially thanks to SECO mechanism, Ministry of Public Administration, Management and Local Self-Government. They included us in the very process of making an action plan, which was a very big step concerning the meetings at the beginning of 2011, when the relevant ministries didn't even attend the meetings of sectoral groups. So this step forward is very important, and the other aspect is a very good example of recognizing the sectoral work and sectoral approach, and that is the support to SECO for the human resources and social development, and also the social inclusion and poverty reduction unit of the government of Serbia, of the Republic of Serbia. You know that we don't have the financial support, the regular financial assistance that would help functioning of this consortium concerning team education. So we recognize it as support, and they managed to finance part of the training of civil society, SECO, and the resources, and to organize meetings with the whole international community that works in that sector, which is very complex sector. And those are 2 very good examples how this mechanism can be used and be what the first idea was. But the fact is, besides these positive examples and the progress that have been made in the previous years, there are challenges when we talk about functioning of SECO mechanism. First challenge is connected to the process of planning and of the public policies in Serbia and their implementation. In this process, we cannot divide what the process of public inclusion in creating public policies are. So what it comes to, so we're doing that at a very late phase with very few information, and there is also great challenge, and we talked about that in the introductory session. Those are very many strategic documents. We don't have the development plan, and when we talk about these priorities, it's very hard to prioritize when we talk about one sector having many strategic documents that are not compatible. So that is one of the key challenges that we are facing. And also there are very closed institutions by the representatives of the authorities that do not recognize the importance and the capacities of the civil society, and they cannot use them so in order to help them. So we have to go through the mediators, and that is the office, European Integration Office, or the Office for Cooperation with the Civil Society. And we do not have any replies, and sometimes we are almost ignored. And that is one of the barriers when we are talking about effective role of the civil society in monitoring IPA funds. And one of the limiting factors is also the capacity of the civil society. Due to the limited capacity, sometimes the participation is not enough, is insufficient and ineffective in sense of the final outcome, the final result, and we have to work on that. And we also mentioned the complexity of the process, and also the very often change of rules. First part of the session, we talked about the change from IPA 1 to IPA 2. We learned everything about IPA 1, then there were new rules and new regulations. And, of course, that is one of the challenges. And what is also a challenge is a complete inclusion of the civil society in the face of monitoring. First, I said that is the part connected to planning, and civil society also find its place there. But in the next period, we have to work on that because including ourselves in monitoring regarding IPA funds is very important. So in order to have effective cooperation of civil society concerning the monitoring IPA funds, some steps that I see as possible contribution and recommendations concerning that is the cooperation with relevant ministries and the other stakeholders that should be constant and even outside of this programming. So we have to have the replies and feedback from all the stakeholders. So when we come to the planning, to designing, programming, we know each other and we know what we have to do. So we need the constant monitoring in programming these projects. So there were a lot of trainings, but because of the scope and the complexity of the process, we have to work more on that. We have to make a lot of effort and provide financial assistance for the whole mechanism to function better. And one of suggestion is that there are more grant schemes in the future in order to strengthen capacity of the civil society and employ domestic stakeholders when we talk about implementing the projects. And that is all step forward for what awaits us in the next period when we become the member of the EU. And in this preparation period, because of the Chapter 22 obligations, I don't know if somebody mentioned that before, Partnership Act, where partnership is mandatory when we talk about investment funds. So that part of SECO mechanism that we have already developed, and the infrastructure that exists that between civil society and the executive for the needs of the future European cohesion funds should be used. And that is one of my that's some of my suggestions and conclusions. I have been here from the very beginning, and as much as I have been very critical, but when I go back 5 years before, the fact is that it is useful, we use it, we cannot ignore it. There is still there is space to improve it, and the fact that I'm here today and talk about these topics is something that is already a step forward towards it. So in that context, this is something that we certainly have to use because it exists and we are promoting it as a model of cooperation in the region. So it will be my pleasure if somebody is interested regarding SECO mechanism, and my colleague Anna is here. She can also say something about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniela, for this presentation. I really had the opportunity to see how the civil society operates when I came here together with the delegation of Friends of Serbia. I could see that you have good mechanisms and good performance. It means that you're doing your job well, you're on the right track. And I can say that the role of both parliamentarians and the civil society in this younger democracy should be larger and they should have more powers. The ministries do not pay too much attention to them, which should be changed. I remember when I was an MP, when I speak based on the experience from the European Parliament, for example, I can tell you about this experience, how well it is, the cooperation between the Commission, the Council and the Parliament, how well they organize the debates and draw conclusions, give suggestions. So this is a model that should be perhaps applied in other national level. We have about 10 more minutes for questions and answers so that we can start with the new panel. If you have any questions, you can make them. The floor is yours. My name is Gordana Čomić. I come from I'm an MP at the National Assembly of the Republic of Serbia. I have no criticism when it comes to the information that Mr. Božović and Ms. Terry Reinke have shared with us. On the contrary, I'm quite satisfied that we have Ms. Daniela Božović with us, that she has shared the data with us, and it is promising. She's promising that they will do their control and monitoring, that there will be more interaction with the civil society. And now something totally different, as the English would say. I believe that the project, the language that we use for the project language, let's say, it's something that is killing the European Union. But I'm in minority and the people keep using this kind of terminology, because this kind of register of terminology is saying that the European Union is alienated and not useful. What else is my problem besides the fact that I cannot make this project terminology less used? I, as a parliamentarian, cannot participate in drafting action plan and target the funds, allocate the funds by using our brains, our people. When will I be able to do this? This is the key problem if we are talking about the role of Parliament. I've been working for Parliament where almost I'm working in the Parliament where almost 70% of the laws are actually adopted by urgent procedure. I also participate in regional parliaments where the executive power branch has total control and direct everything. What we need is a long-term financial resource and model that could teach us how to lead a dialogue, how to run a dialogue about how much money we need, what to spend it on, and who should control the use and expenditure of this money, because this is something we lack. Namely, the goal is not just to have reports on the fact that the money has not been used well, and this is the cause why European parliaments have problem to explain to their local communities why even money is allocated and given to some countries that are supposed to join the EU. Also, we ourselves do not define our basic needs in order to avoid some mistakes. For example, should we allocate money to the cross-border cooperation, to development of minorities, to development of institutions, we are changing the allocation of monies constantly. That is our problem at the national level. And for me, nothing is as bad as the fact that when I visit my electors, the people who vote for me, who should vote for me, they say we do not have any benefits of European Union. That's the problem that we as the parliamentarians are facing to tackle. I've been tackling the issue of the European funds ever since 2008, or even more, after the European Agency for Reconstruction, which was the dark age of Serbia. So I've been in this even since 2004, 2005, after the feasibility study. And instead of having some kind of evidence in front of me saying, yes, this is why European Union is beneficial, I actually meet people who say there is no use, it's not beneficial for us to join the European Union. I'm just telling you, I'm not asking anything from you, I'm just saying that me as a parliamentarian, I'm suggesting that we should reduce this, let's say, project terminology, project register, language, or mindset. And what is our task as parliamentarians is to see if we can have some kind of regional agreement to improve the communication with people, to show them how the money is spent, regardless of how it is spent, to show them that it is used for improvement of their everyday life. I will conclude with a comment. I have insisted that the European Integration Office and the EU delegation do a public poll on what people in Serbia think about the money from the European Union, and almost 80% of the people actually think that the greatest donor in Serbia is Russia. But Russia has not provided it with a single cent. Nada, nothing. But people believe this, and it is not your job to explain to people that this is wrong. It is my job to do so, and we are doing our best. So I have the opportunity to hear a lot and learn a lot from you at this conference, but just wanted to give you a few suggestions for the future, improvement of future work. Thank you. Thank you for these kind words. You're talking about some very, very important things, and this is why we are here, to discuss this. Any reflections, any interventions? Yes, one more question, and then we will hear the answers.
It's a question. I'm going to make an attempt to provide for some kind of a solution, because we have the same problem in our country as well. One of the things, we have to be very down to earth. It's not solving the problem is not if you change the language, because the language itself talks about your capacity. Tomorrow, when you're part of EU, when you have cohesion funds, it will be even more difficult. So the solution is to find a different solution which has nothing to do with the language, because language is with the capacity. So if you look at it from this point of view, you have to take into account another reality, and that is the following. The Commission hates grant schemes. They don't like grant schemes because it's too much work. But the governments hate grant schemes as well. So in effect, what we have is what we heard today. Everyone is going to push for the larger projects because they're much easier to administer. So my proposal is as following. if you have to have large projects, which probably you will have to, then I think to be creative enough, it'll be good if within the terms of reference, so when it goes, when it's tendered out, within the terms of reference, we should ask for whoever is going to be implementing the project, whatever consultancy company, should spend at least 5 to 10% with a national entity. That could be an NGO, it could be a consultancy company, a national consultancy company, because in that case, this national entity will be involved from day number one within the implementation of the project, and that is also a capacity building thing. And they will be actually spending 5 to 10% of the whole project. So if we're talking about a project of 500,000, 50,000 euro is enough money for whatever NGO, and they will be involved in everyday implementation of the project. And this is an idea that I've been trying to communicate with the Commission for quite some time. Now, to be honest, I'll give you the Commission's answer. They say, that's a great idea, but then in Macedonia, we have problems in getting the consultancy companies interested in implementing the projects, and if we put this as an additional thing, we're afraid that they're not going to be interested. But if this is a regional thing, and if it becomes part of the rules, then I think we have the same language, and within certain years, we can see that there will be a move. And to give you an example that where we can actually start, let's start with a regional project that goes back to what the gentleman from the Regional Cooperation Council was saying. I mean, if you look at the Regional Cooperation Council, the Southeast European Strategy 2020, it's one of the best documents I've ever seen that has ever been developed from the European Commission. But if you look at it from the point of view of gender, I bet there wasn't a woman that was part of the team. It has nothing to do with the woman, and gender is supposed to be a horizontal issue. It's supposed to be a document where you open it, and you should be able to see the gender equality policy there. But it's not there. So my proposal is, let's do something else. As parliaments within the region, let's come up with a different thing. I call it a regional gender ombudsman that will fight for the gender equality in the region within the parliaments. And we start with revising the Southeast European strategy so that the outputs and the indicators are gender sensitive. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I will ask colleagues, panelists.
Actually, I need to leave 1 minute ago, but I'll try to be brief and to react to what has been said. First, maybe on the gender sensitivity question, we have been pushing quite a lot in the European Parliament to make this, well, it is a horizontal principle and it is in the treaties, but it does not necessarily mean that it's being implemented. And now what we are fighting for is not only to have gender aggregated data, for example, but to have stronger gender budgeting, not only in the structural and regional funds, but all over the budget, to see how different projects affect men and women differently. So, for example, if I make a very blunt example, if you build a highway, it's better for men. If you build a better train system, it's better for women, because in most societies less women have cars, and to have these kind of studies and assessments in order to take decisions that would then benefit men and women more. So I can only support you in this. But I also wanted to make one comment on the language question, because I do believe it is important. And I do think that if somebody, actually a friend of mine, I'm staying here in Belgrade with a friend, and actually I invited a friend of mine to come here today, just to hear us speak and what he would understand from what we are saying. He doesn't have anything to do with European politics, he doesn't know what all these different funds are. And I think that probably from all the very good and very deep-thoughted interventions, he wouldn't have understood anything. And this is maybe not the place where this needs to happen, but I completely agree that we need to find a language so that all of these things are not only something technical that are happening in expert groups, but that this is something that people actually feel has an effect on their lives. And for that, sometimes I have the feeling that especially the European Commission is not always doing the greatest job, but it's on us. And I would say that it's on us as parliamentarians, because we are the ones who have to do this translation service somehow, so that they better understand what is actually happening. And I think that this is true for the Western Balkans, but this is just the same true for all other parts of the European Union, because apparently, and I'm coming back to this example from Wales, in the past we have failed to actually do this translation. And with this, I'm so sorry, but I will thank all of you again, and for me this was a really interesting conference, and I hope you still have very interesting discussions.
Okay. Thank you, Terry. I wish you a nice flight and nice weekend also. Do you want to add something, Daniela? In short.
I would just like to add a few words. I fully agree when it comes to the language, project language. It is important, but also it is the role of the civil society to do the outreach, to actually be closer to the citizens, use the language terminology that is closer to the citizens. As you have mentioned, the research has showed, the poll that you mentioned showed that we need to do more, to invest more efforts. And the fact is that for the past 2 years we have had only the projects that have been focused on communication with citizens. I believe that these kinds of projects should have been implemented 15 years ago, when we started with implementation of projects. When the Ambassador Davenport was talking about the 15 years of the partnership with Serbia, I believe that at the very beginning they should have adopted the communication strategy, not only now, to see how the outreach should be done. So this is something that stands ahead of us, and we need to invest twice as much efforts in trying to explain to the citizens not just about what IPA funds are, but to explain and make all those values more closer to them.
Projects, and then PR is easier, so that's the answer. I suggest that we finish this panel.